Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our February 3rd edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today's episode features two guests who will explore current opportunities and future possibilities for farmers through artificial intelligence and other technological advancements. We'll start with big picture reflections from futurist Jack Uldrich. Then we'll bring things a little closer to home with Iowa State University Ag Innovation Professor Matt Darr and talk about the learning opportunities available in our own backyard. Let's start with Jack Uldrich, who was a keynote speaker at Iowa Farm Bureau's recent Young Farmer Conference, an event that drew more than 500 young farmers from across the state. That's where Spokesman reporter Bob Bion caught up with Jack Uldrich.
Jack, welcome. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. Maybe you can share a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you became interested in futurism and how it relates to agriculture.
Yeah, quick sort of bio. I'm a graduate of Drake University. After that, I went into the Navy, got out, went to graduate school in strategic planning, worked in the Pentagon as a strategic planner for a few years. And then a curious twist of fate, I returned to Minnesota. I supported a fellow by the name of Jesse Ventura when he was running for governor, and he won, and I served in his cabinet as the director of the Office of Strategic Planning. And it was really in that position that I began getting a lot more serious about looking 5-10 years out. But after the end of his administration, I wrote my first book on emerging technology, and really for the last 25 years that's what I've been doing, sort of writing on emerging technology, future trends, and helping businesses and organizations think about how they can best prepare for the future. And then recently I have made the decision to focus exclusively on farming and agriculture. One, because I have a passion for it, and second, and most importantly, I do sincerely believe it is the most important industry in the world, not just to feed people, but our ability to reimagine, and I think they're going to be a really big player in addressing some other really serious issues.
So you've talked about agriculture being on the cusp of revolutionary change. What do you see as the most transformative technological trends shaping the future of farming and agribusiness? I thought it was very interesting. You highlighted some of the company advancements like John Deere See and Spray. Carbon Robotics, I actually did an article on that on their laser weeder this last year, and that was fascinating. Drone applications. So what do you see? What are some of the trends and where are we going?
Yeah, I think the most important, and I don't think this will surprise too many people, are the advances in artificial intelligence. And that is because artificial intelligence are going to help us make sense of satellite technology, which is a trend I think that farmers should be aware of. It's also going to make robots and drones smarter, and we're going to be able to use the data and make sense of the data. But I also think there are a couple of other trends. I think that biotechnology, specifically gene editing technology, is one that is very interesting to me. It has huge potential to create climate-resistant crop, drought-resistant crop, perhaps disease, pest-resistant crops. But now the question is, how will the consumer marketplace react to that? That's a different issue. A couple of other trends, I would say the push towards regenerative agriculture is a real trend, and it's Cargill and it's General Mills and PepsiCo, but I also think that a lot of farmers understand that regenerative agriculture is going to help them be better stewards of the soil. They're gaining increased understanding of the importance of biodiversity, and then storing additional carbon in our land as a way to help mitigate CO2 emissions and get paid for it is a really exciting trend. And then the last one, and this really varies depending on community, is water. And I didn't address that in the presentation, but it's something that we need to be deeply aware of and cognizant of.
So if we dive into AI just a little bit more as one of those advancements that is just coming at us full force, you mentioned a few things like weather forecasting for agriculture, the swine industry, with AI, succession planning, and AI as an ag advisor. So hit on one of those and maybe kind of tell us how it works.
Well, no, I think we can hit on all of them. I think the easiest way to think of artificial intelligence, just for those listeners who aren't really familiar with it is mimicking human intelligence. And so I think the lowest hanging fruit is going to be using artificial intelligence for crop monitoring. I mean, as we have all of the satellite data and the soil sensors, farmers are inundated with data, so much so that they can't make sense of it, but who can make sense of it is these algorithms in the cloud. So I think that that's some low-hanging fruit. The animal identification, there are already a number of companies who are helping identify individual animals, and so you can understand when that animal ate, how much it ate, when it ate. You can optimize feed. I also think that artificial intelligence, because it can draw on so much data, it can detect certain diseases a few days earlier than even the most experienced farmers, like mastitis and kurtosis. Like, I understand that farmers can identify that, but just think if you can do it a few days earlier, like that's what artificial intelligence is going to do. And then another area I didn't get into is the microbiome, sort of understanding the bacteria in the soil. The microbes have always been there, and I think most people generally understand they play some role, but now we're going to have a much better understanding of what exact role they play and where they're doing a really good job, where they're falling short, and how we might want to tweak what we're doing with the land or figure out new ways to make our soil healthier. And so I think what's fascinating to me about artificial intelligence, it is going to tell farmers things that they don't already know, that most of the farmers have great experience, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But I think in this new world, we all need humility to the idea that maybe, just maybe, with all of this data, we're going to come to some new insights that will cause you to think differently about farming or to just be aware of how we might do things different in the future. But then let me just tell you about the weather forecast, and I used this example. We have a growing number of satellites coursing in our orbit, and so we're collecting a lot more on the weather. But the example I used in my presentation comes from Microsoft, is that they last year could provide pretty good hyper localized weather forecast with 15 minutes warning for a severe storm. This year, or 2024, an hour. And those 45 minutes of advance warning matter to a lot of farmers. And so I think they're going to be able to get their laborers off the field, animals, equipment off the field. But here's the thing. In 2025, I actually think we'll see those weather forecasts move from an hour to maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 12 hours in advance. I can't guarantee that, but that's how fast these advances are coming.
Yeah, I think about the derechas we've had here in Iowa and the advance notice that we already have, but to get that even more so to be further prepared, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And I think what I like about that example is that's insightful, that's information that makes a difference, right? That's what gets me excited about artificial intelligence, is the actionable insights it will be able to provide. I do want to say this for your listeners. I tend to speak about the beneficial aspects of artificial intelligence. There are these macro concerns about where artificial intelligence is headed, and I just want to acknowledge those are real. There are a lot of benefits, but there are some very serious unanswered questions that the experts in artificial intelligence have to answer for the rest of us and society before we go full-blown and embrace this technology.
Well, you've talked in the past and a little bit about a swirling sea of uncertainty, but also about the opportunities it presents. What does that mean, and how can farmers and agribusinesses strike a balance between managing risks and embracing opportunities?
Yeah, I like that phrase, swirling sea of uncertainty. But that is the world that we are living in. And first, I think that of all industries, farmers understand uncertainty, the vagaries of weather, of markets, of competition, of changing consumer. So you've already been living in this swirling sea of uncertainty, but now we're adding this new element of technological change. My first piece of advice is this, is that uncertainty is simply a principle of the future. We can't wish it or will it away. But what we can do is, and this is why I really encourage all farmers, I call it my Future Friday 15, but regularly just take time to contemplate the future and these technological shifts, because what we can do is first we can just breathe, go a little bit slower, and then instead of fearing all of this change, we can begin lifting our heads and saying, oh, there are some opportunities in this. I can use this, I can use artificial intelligence to reduce my water use or to increase the health of my animal or get better weather forecasts, whatever it is. Or these new advances in biologicals, like how can we use bacteria to do things different? So view uncertainty as a principle of the future and just breathe, go slow, and whenever you're afraid, try to view the issue from a different perspective and say, what's the opportunity? What's the hidden opportunity in all of this?
You touched a little bit on regenerative agriculture, and there was a little bit of talk about sustainable energy gaining some traction. How do you see these movements evolving, and what role will technology play in accelerating their adoption?
From my perspective, regenerative agriculture is something that I have been following for 5 years. The big food companies, the Cargills, the PepsiCos, the McCains of the world, the General Mills, are understanding that if they want to be still in business in 100 years, that they have to become better stewards of the land and the soil. And so I do take them at face value when they say we are serious about this trend and we're serious about helping farmers make the transition to regenerative agriculture. This is not an easy transition. It's going to take, most people think, at least a minimum of 3 years, and there are some risks, and it doesn't work for everyone, but I think this is a growing trend because soil health is going to continue to be important. Water retention is going to become more important. Our understanding of the importance of biodiversity and then storing additional carbon in the ground. That's a trend that farmers should be really excited about because they are getting paid to do that. And I know many of your listeners will say, well, we're already storing carbon in the ground, and yes, you are. But what's different about regenerative agriculture is that we can now store additional carbon, and we can use technology to measure that. And if we can measure it, we can then pay the farmers more for it. So I think you'll have an additional source of income around regenerative ag, and it'll primarily be driven by carbon credits. But I also think your water use is going to go down, and ultimately you're going to use fewer chemical inputs because of those practices. So you might also save on those costs while either maintaining your yield or potentially even increasing your yield. So it might be a win-win-win situation.
You've emphasized the importance of creating a culture of innovation. You gave some examples with companies and what they're doing. Campbell's, you mentioned Microsoft, Delta with sustainable aviation fuel. That's pretty cool stuff. So
I think we can all agree, like Delta and Microsoft are not conventional food or agricultural companies, but in Delta's case, it's all around sustainable aviation fuel. The carbon footprint of jets flying all around the world is astounding. Airplanes account for approximately 3% of all CO2 emissions, and they're very serious about lowering their carbon footprint. And they just had their first flight from Minneapolis to New York using sustainable aviation fuel. Only used 7,000 gallons, which is quite literally a drop in the bucket. But this is how trends start. In Minnesota, my home state, $5 billion facility up by Moorhead is being developed. Over in Montana, a $1.4 billion sustainable aviation fuel. And I know Camelina is sort of today the primary source of the sustainable aviation fuel, but soybeans and potentially even corn stover are, I think, going to become feedstocks for this. And so farmers are going to be supplying that market. Microsoft is quite interesting to me as a futurist, that why are they spending $250 million buying land and getting into agriculture? To me, that's simply a trend that says they see and believe that they can apply their technological tools, their data centers, artificial intelligence, sensor technology, in order to make a profit. So anytime I see unconventional players looking at a long existing space, that tells me they somehow think that the current people in the industry aren't as productive or efficient as they could be. So if nothing else, it should be a wake-up call to the ag industry to say, you're going to have new competitors and you're going to have to up your game and you're going to have to look at maybe using these same technological tools to fight back and stay competitive.
Well, looking to the future a little bit, what actions do you think farmers can take to thrive in this rapidly changing environment? Can you share one or two specific examples? Being open to change, you mentioned cover crops, things like that.
Yeah, a few, and I mentioned it earlier. First, just regularly take time to think about these trends, and there are a lot of wonderful news sources out there, so that would be one. The second thing is you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and to me what this means is I grew up as a strategic planner, and I still think that there's value in strategic planning, thinking 5-10 years out in the future. But our world is now shifting so fast that all of us, especially strategic planners like myself, have to have some humility that sometimes strategic planning lulls us into a false sense of security. We think, oh, we've discerned the future, we're just going to move out that way. But then tomorrow something new, unexpected pops up. So the question all of your listeners should be asking is, okay, if strategic planning isn't as helpful, what has to replace it? I would argue strategic experimentation. None of us fully know what's going to work. And here's where farmers are going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable. And this is where you're going to have to maybe experiment with cover crops or talk to your local agricultural extension officer about how you might want to transition to regenerative agriculture. Maybe you want to look into agrophotovoltaics and at least produce a little bit of your energy, dedicate a little bit of your land to these things. I'm a really big advocate of experimentation, but experimentation by its very nature entails risk, and risk means not everything works. And so I think the big mind shift every farmer is going to have to undertake is don't view it as failure if something didn't work. Learn. And so quite literally the phrase don't bet the farm on any one of these things is quite real, but could you begin playing around with, a small pilot project, or reach out to the local innovation officer at Iowa State, or some cooperatives here in Iowa are doing some amazing things.
You mentioned agrivoltaics. So Iowa State University is doing some stuff with that in conjunction with Alliant Energy. And they've put some solar panels up there, and they're growing strawberries and broccoli and all sorts of stuff underneath it. And they're having some real success. So being able to share that from the institutional standpoint from Iowa State for farmers in Iowa, and maybe get people to be interested in something like that. That's just a different mindset.
It really is. And I know that Purdue University has done similar research on that. And I think what it really excites me is, look, this is a tough, tight margin business. But if you could reduce your energy cost by 20 or 40%, that's diversified. And then I don't expect every farmer to begin growing, broccoli or strawberry, but if a few could, it's an additional income stream, and it acts as a hedge in this already uncertain world. So as the world gets more uncertain, I think you're going to have to try and figure out how to diversify your income streams, and solar panels and microgrids are one way to do that.
Well, I thought you had some great advice for Iowa farmers who maybe feel a little bit overwhelmed by the pace of change that we're going to be seeing here. Take time to think, and think long-term into the future, not just today, but long-term into the future. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit, why that's so important?
Yeah, well, first, there's this wonderful quote. It's not from me, but it says, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. We are so inundated with our smartphones and cable news and other news sources that it's hard to suss out what is really important. And counterintuitively, one of the best ways to figure out what's really important is just to step away from all of the news that you are receiving and then say, you know what, I have to really think about this. Is it artificial intelligence? Is it regenerative? Is it photovoltaics? Is it biologicals? Maybe it's all, but don't try and do everything at once, but just step away. And I think it is in that space of silence that you can begin sort of saying, no, that's not important, or the ROI on that doesn't pencil out for me today, but this particular one, okay, it seems that it might. I'm going to spend a little more time thinking about that. So just go slow and know that you don't have to do everything today, but do take regular time. And I know a lot of these, you'll have some time in your tractor or your combine, or maybe skip one of the cafe sessions with your buddies and just think for yourself.
Well, maybe a final thought here. I thought it was really interesting, the personal decision you made to focus on agriculture moving forward. I like the quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it. That's a quote that you kind of end your talks with all the time. But you're going to focus on ag and farming. You mentioned that agriculture and farming is the most important industry in the world. Maybe just a thought process on why you decided to do this and your thoughts on agriculture in general going forward.
Yeah, 3 reasons. I would say first, no surprise here, agriculture feeds the world. That is even more important than shelter. So I think we have to feed ourselves first. So from that aspect, it is critically important. Personally, the rapidly changing climate concerns me. And we can debate whether it's human-driven or some of it is always occurring, and the data tells me that it's a combination of both. But what I get really excited about is agriculture is the one industry that can be a potential solution to the problem by storing additional carbon, by doing things even better than you already are. And then the third reason, and this really gets into my faith, is that we have to be better stewards of the earth. And I think if you look at our water and a lot of our land, I think all of us know we can be doing a better job, and we have to be doing a better job. And I know that farmers care deeply about this, but I think all of us need to be thinking and caring even more deeply. And I think we'll get there. And I'm really optimistic that the farmers, you've been feeding the world for time immemorial, you'll continue to do it, but you're going to do it even smarter and better and more sustainably, and we are going to make our soil really healthy and our water cleaner. So I'm just optimistic, and I want to play a small part in helping farmers and agribusinesses moving into this new future.
Thanks, Jack. There really is a lot to consider when farmers think about their future technology use, potential efficiencies, and new revenue streams. But I think Jack offered some good advice there, encouraging farmers to think in terms of strategic experimentation. Start with the strategic opportunity you've identified, try it out, and learn from it. And when it comes to figuring out which opportunities make the most sense for you, tap into the knowledge we have in our own state at Iowa State University. Matt Darr is an Ag and Biosystems Engineering professor at Iowa State University, and he also leads the Digital Ag Innovation Lab at ISU. Spokesman reporter Bob Beyond recently called Matt to get his thoughts on AI and the possibilities he sees for Iowa farmers.
Thanks for being with us today to visit a little bit about AI in agriculture. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey in agricultural engineering and innovation that led to your current role at Iowa State University?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up on a diversified grain, livestock, and high-value crop farm in eastern Ohio. So I've been around agriculture my entire life. Decided after going to college that, I wanted to go to graduate school and continue to explore this space. And I really, kind of fell in love with the work that we get to do through the university. Growing up in a rural farm environment, knowing my extension agents as a teenager, and it's pretty easy for me to get my head wrapped around the value of the land-grant mission of teaching, extension, and research. That's pulled me into my job at Iowa State, and been here 17 years, and just so fortunate to be not only at a university, but in a community within central Iowa that's innovative, passionate, and definitely leading the country in the work that we do in ag technology.
So what inspired your focus on precision ag and digital technologies?
Growing up on a farm, I think you see the good times and the bad times, right? And for me, I would say I'm an individual that grew up in the age of precision ag. I was in high school when the first yield monitor was invented, and it's a core memory for me. The first time that I saw a yield map from our county, and the opportunity that data and technology provided to farm differently, to manage our operation differently. That was definitely a spark point for me. As I evolved over time, in college, I owned and operated a custom spray business, kind of a one-person operation, and began to adopt, light bars and some of the early auto steer type technology, and just saw how impactful it was to my productivity, my efficiency, how much easier it made my days. At that point, the hook was set. I happened to be an individual that liked math in high school, so I ended up in a career in agricultural engineering that's been a perfect fit of my passion, which is both agriculture and then how we leverage technology to make our lives better.
Well, we're definitely moving towards AI solutions in agriculture. How would you explain the role of AI to a general audience?
That's a great question. AI is around us every day, whether we know it or not. AI is not a new thing. AI has been around for a lot of years, decades, really. What's new is our ability to harness it through computing power is maybe better than it has been in the past. What AI really boils down to for agriculture is technology that allows us to hopefully take some of the complexity out of our systems. AI ultimately is a solution for computing and understanding math and data in a more deeper way that us as humans have a hard time uncovering. For agriculture itself, it's helping us on selecting better hybrids. It's helping us to certainly create machinery technology. It's helping us to understand, the health of our individual animals and livestock at a deeper level than we've had in the past.
What are we seeing as the most exciting developments in precision ag that are being driven by AI and machine learning?
Agriculture is very diverse. It's not just row crops. It's not just livestock. It touches many, many elements of our food, fiber, and energy supply chains. We're seeing every element of that production system or the supply chains picking up elements of AI. There's free apps to do weed detection, right? When you're out in the middle of the field and you don't have your weed book with you to be able to understand what is that weed that I'm looking at. There are technologies that are leveraging satellite imagery to maybe help us make better decisions on irrigation or disease or stress management in our crops. But then there's a whole other end of more advanced, more powerful tools that are automating our equipment. I think we all get really excited about what's happening in the livestock sector with the ability to monitor animal health, be more predictive of animal health in a way that saves disease and death loss in our herds and helps make a better manager of those animals.
Yeah, would you mind discussing a little bit more about some of the currently used applications in agriculture, maybe for weather forecasting or real-time decision-making on the farms, pest control? We're using AI in planting and harvesting and pest management, climate change, water quality, soil health. It just seems like it's everywhere for us.
Yeah, and again, you think about AI being a tool, right? I think there can be some misconceptions about this, that AI is always right. That's not the case, but it absolutely is a tool that can help us make great decisions, better decisions. If we talk about soils, for example, things as simple as time to plant. are my soils dry enough, and are weather conditions in the next few days, favorable enough to get out and start the planning process. AI tools have been built over decades of data to help provide farmers additional insight. Now, I doubt there's that many farmers that don't ever visit a field or purely rely on AI to make those decisions, but it's absolutely a tool that can help trigger us to take the next step forward. Pest control, pest management. There's been some great demonstrations of AI scanning the information on Twitter and social media sources that are providing indication of how pests are moving across the country, giving us an extra maybe week forecast on those diseases that might be coming into our areas. In the end, AI systems are data driven. And so when it comes to management specific decisions, we're definitely still in the phase of AI providing recommendations, not necessarily all the answers though. And so, we would certainly expect farmers are using these as a tool in their toolbox, but probably not their only tool to date.
Well, and another exciting avenue, obviously, is autonomous machinery, kind of transforming day-to-day farming operations. You've got autonomous tractors, sprayers, those kind of things. What are we going to see along those lines?
There's a really clear difference between autonomous vehicle machinery and prediction of future weather patterns or future pest applications, right? So let's dive a little bit into this, right? See and Spray, for example, is a great example of an AI-based technology that is absolutely here on the market today. See and Spray machines use cameras on sprayers to identify specific weeds in the field and spray just that area of the field to eliminate those weeds. AI has accelerated that technology by helping to really drive the foundation of how that machine can detect and see that weed. But we know the weed's there. The cameras and these systems are only detecting weeds that exist. Those control systems and automation systems have been really successful out of the gate for agriculture. That's a little different than the challenge of using maybe a predictive tool to decide, is there going to be a weed there in the future that's not here today? AI is entering that space, but is not as fully matured as it is in some of the automation sectors. Another aspect of that is, even within Iowa, there's 10 companies that are involved with developing or selling fully autonomous equipment, right? Tractors that can autonomously run your grain carts or do tillage on your farm without an operator involved. AI is innately involved in almost every aspect of those systems. We have to remember that we've been auto-steering tractors for decades in agriculture, 2 decades at least in agriculture. The concept of how to do auto-steering tractors is not new. AI is having to replicate every other part of the process that we went through as an operator. AI has to decide that thing in front of us, is that just a piece of a cardboard box that came off the road, or is that a tile inlet, or is that an animal in front of the machine? As an operator, we make these decisions every single day of, do I have to go around that? Do I stop and pick that up? Is it a rock, or do I go straight through it? For autonomous vehicles, AI is continuing to develop in a way that replicates those decisions for operators. So it's exciting the direction we're going, and fortunately it's all based on a foundation of 20 years of precision ag adoption across the Midwest.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the Digital Ag Innovation Lab at Iowa State. Explain your role there. Are there any projects or breakthroughs leveraging AI to address challenges in agriculture through the Digital Ag Innovation Lab?
Yeah, I'm the director of that facility, this team. We're made up of about 50 individuals, full-time staff and graduate students and undergraduates who come in every day with a passion to make agriculture better. Our purpose is to enhance knowledge and innovation. We work a lot with industry partners to help them accelerate their technology developments and help to deliver it to market. When we think about breakthroughs we've helped with, our technology through the Digital Ag Innovation Lab is embedded in over 50 products that farmers buy today. We're proud of the fact that the yield data is better in the country because of the work that we do, and herbicide drift is reduced because of the work that we do every single day. And we use AI in every one of those and the majority of those applications. The thing that we're probably most proud of, though, with our work through the Digital Ag Innovation Lab is how we tie together all three pillars of the land grant system. By working with industry partners and helping to develop new technology, it puts us in a better place to communicate to farmers on how to leverage value from that technology. Not just how to use it, but really how to drive value, how to ensure that when they adopt technology on their farm, it's the right technology for them, and they can scale it in a way that returns revenue. And then we take that to the classroom, too. We think we can do a better job preparing the future workforce in Iowa because of our work in digital ag technology and making sure that the many companies we have throughout the state and surrounding states that really serve the foundation of our economic development have enough talent in the pipeline to continue to be successful well into the future.
Well, with new technology, obviously comes some challenges. What are some of the key challenges in implementing AI technologies on farms do you think we'll see moving forward? What advancements are we going to see? Any challenges with labor shortages or the need for precision in applying fertilizers and pesticides? What challenges do you think we'll see going forward?
So there's a couple things with AI that's unique in agriculture, right? We often joke that the folks that are doing autonomous cars, they have some things easier than us. They have stop signs that always look the same. They have lines that get painted on the road. Now, unfortunately, in ag, we don't have somebody else coming at us 70 miles an hour down the other side of the road. But ag is very diverse. One of our biggest challenges with AI in agriculture is that AI is a trained system. AI requires that we've essentially seen something before, we learn from that, and we apply that into future decisions. Every field and every farm is unique. Every environment, whether it's dusty one day or wet the next day or mud building up on things, or of course in the livestock area, you've got a tremendous amount of diversity in animals and environments. That's our biggest challenge in agriculture. One of our biggest challenges is the role of the environment and making sure that when we release a product to the farming community, the expectation is it's going to work for every single farmer. And some of those farming environments, hasn't been part of the training set. So, AI needs to be able to manage that part of it. And then throughout the workforce, our first level, our dealers, our ag retailers, and service providers, AI is new for all them as well. And we have opportunities ahead of us to train and educate those individuals to make sure that the service and support that farmers are getting matches their expectations and needs.
Well, if we look into the future a little bit, what advancements in AI do you foresee having the most transformative effect on ag in the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe can you share a couple of exciting emerging technologies that we may see?
I want to preface this a little bit that I'm a big believer that in ag, we're always evolving. I think we'd all agree that 1,000 years from now, we're still going to need food and energy.
Yeah.
Right? Those things are not going away. When I talk about what's up next, I do like to remind folks that even technology like See & Spray, right? The first See & Spray product that was ever on the market was sold in 1979. And they weren't using cameras or GPUs at the time, but they were using people on sprayers with hand wands, marketing sprayers that targeted individual weeds. The first patent for an auto-steer tractor was 1941. The issues that we're solving today, labor availability, dynamic pest pressure, whether that be from weeds or diseases or insects, selection and placement of the right hybrids on our fields, how to be sustainable, both environmentally and economically. These challenges are the same things that have been challenging agriculture for many, many years. AI today is simply another tool in our toolbox that is helping us to maybe address those faster than we have before, giving us new tools to work with into the future. To me, transformative is maybe not what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, but I absolutely believe that we are going to see a continued advancement in robotics and automation, both in the livestock sector and the grain sector, to address key challenges, figuring out how to get our work done with less people, figuring out how to accomplish our goals and our farming practices as efficiently as we can, and making sure that we're economically and environmentally sustainable through that process.
So you think there's anything you'd like to add or highlight about the importance of an Iowa farmer embracing AI in agriculture, or how farmers can start integrating it into their operations?
I encourage all farmers to try new things. And I also think it's really important to know that it's probably not going to be perfect the first time you try it. I'm old enough to remember when Google got started, right? I sometimes joke with the students I have in classes now that there was a time on Google where when you did a search, you had to click next page. We don't do that much anymore. If you have to go to page 2 or page 3 in a Google search, you searched the wrong word. But it didn't get there in a day, right? It took time to evolve. The technologies that we're seeing in AI today, the predictive analytics for hybrid placement, the automation tools for running a grain cart or See and Spray for weeds, I would not expect that it's going to be perfect in every single environment every single year. But I do expect that each and every year these technologies are going to get better. Again, because the problems they're addressing are not changing. These are problems we've had in agriculture, for opportunities in agriculture for a very long time. So keep an open mind. As you go into any new technology, make sure that you have some goals on your farm for how you expect that to enhance your business.
Where can we go to get some more information about AI in ag?
It's a topic that's pretty hot right now with many sources. So obviously there's a handful of online outcomes for this, but plug for Iowa State University, right? Our extension programs that we're doing throughout the winter have a strong emphasis into AI. Our own team runs things like Planner University workshops throughout the state that have strong emphasis on how we use technology and automation in those solutions. So, fortunately, farmers have a lot more of those opportunities today than they've had in the past.
Thanks, Matt. You heard Matt recommend ISU Extension as a logical next step if you'd like to explore how some of this technology and automation could work on your own farm. With that in mind, we'll give a plug for one of Matt's colleagues, Doug Hauser. Doug is ISU Extension's new digital agriculture specialist, so he's responsible for helping farmers understand how this technology can make sense for them. We actually just wrote a story about Doug in the Iowa Farm Bureau Spokesman newspaper. There's a link to that story down in the notes for this podcast episode, along with a link to Doug's contact information. We've also included links to more information about ISU's Digital Ag Innovation Lab and some information about Planter University, a planting technology demonstration program ISU is offering right now in early February at locations across Iowa. Finally, I want to call your attention to a few other learning opportunities this month. On February 15th, Iowa Farm Bureau is hosting its annual Acres of Opportunity Conference in Cedar Falls, which is a free event for Iowa Farm Bureau members that allows them to learn about some unique crop and livestock opportunities like raspberries, chestnuts, and meat goats from experienced farmers and other experts. Another popular event is Iowa Farm Bureau's Ag Market Outlook Meeting Series. This series is also free for Farm Bureau members who register and is being held at 5 different locations across the state in mid-February. The Ag Market Outlook Meeting Series gives farmers a chance to hear about some of the economic challenges and opportunities Iowa's farmers are likely to encounter in 2025. You can find information on both of those upcoming Farm Bureau events and a free webinar on hog markets in late February at iowafarmbureau.com/events or by clicking the events link down in the podcast episode notes. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you learned something that will inspire you to explore technology opportunities for your farm this year. And we look forward to you joining us for our next podcast episode on February 17th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.